In this update, we've got a lot of record heat really building across the east and the week ahead, but much cooler conditions come in for the Northwest as well as across the upper Midwest. More severe storms and flooding rains. And then further south, we're watching two areas of tropical disturbed weather. So let's take a look at the overall setup going forward. There are the much more cooler anomalies really starting to filter in. You're really feeling it up there into Idaho and portions of Montana. In fact, they've got winter storm warnings up there with some snow flying above 5,000 feet. But look at all that red starting to show up on the map here. That is a dominating ridge of high pressure that's really going to be starting to build in today. And I think that heat just expands as we get deeper into the week. But further south, you can see where the cooler anomalies are. That's where we have yet another area of disturbed weather right off the coast of Florida there. And then down there into the Bay of Campeche, another area of tropical disturbed weather has a 70% probability of becoming the first named storm of the season. If it does, it will take on the name Alberto, but it looks to spread flooding rains for a good part of Louisiana, especially along the coastal areas of Texas. But looking over the hazard map, folks, that is your winter weather advisories and winter storm warnings for areas of Idaho into Montana. Yeah, they woke up with even some freezing temperatures up there this morning. But that green, that is more flooding rains, and that's where the bullseye is going to be in much of the week, with a lot of water vapor spreading into that area. And you're outside of the ridge because the ridge is highlighted across a good part of Michigan and much of Ohio and Pennsylvania and upstate New York. This will only expand as we get deeper into the week, with numerous records going to fall and be crushed in the week ahead. And I think it extends really well into Thursday, Friday, even portions of the weekend. So further south, let's take a look at the overall setup on the satellite picture. You can see a lot of instability really highlighted across the Dakotas, essentially Minnesota, back into Iowa, portions of Wisconsin. That's why they do have the flood watches. And yes, we're looking at some more severe storms later on this afternoon. Further south, there's the disturbed weather that was essentially over Florida for much of last week, has now shifted and went into the Yucatan Peninsula, but now it's emerging off the southern portions of the Gulf of Mexico here. This is the invest that the National Hurricane Center is keeping an eye on. Has a 70% probability of it forming, whether it takes a storm name or not. If it does, it will be taking the name Alberto. But yes, it's already spreading its tropical moisture inland in a good part of Louisiana, and I think that only filters into southern portions of Texas as we head into tomorrow and especially Wednesday. But for today, here's where the severe storms are going to fly across the Dakotas, essentially Rapid City, down there into the Sioux Falls region, into Minneapolis, further up north as well as far north as Marquette, and then as far south as Nebraska, with more severe storms as we kind of heat up the atmosphere, of course, away from that trough out west and away from the ridge out east. You're kind of in the middle, and you're stuck in that middle with the southern flow off the Gulf of Mexico. It's pretty warm this time of year, and that's just going to put that area of disturbed weather and just funnel it in really the same places for much of the week, with all the flooding rains that's likely to unfold. But here's the first day of record temperatures. So it's not the most significant day by nonetheless, but you can see the contrast in temperatures of seeing, those 40s for highs. Look at that, 45. That's a high temperature, folks, in Montana. That's why we have snow flying up there. But you can see where the boundary is. That's where the cooler anomalies are, and some of the rain is going to unfold. You got widespread 70s and 60s. But away from that, you've got, 90s and 100-degree temperatures in any of these areas highlighted in the circled area. That is the potentially record high temperatures as the 90s expand well into Illinois, Indiana's good part of Ohio, and going into Pennsylvania. This will only deepen as we get into the week ahead. So before today and heading into tomorrow, there's this system down there into the Bay of Campeche. It's finally going to be moving out, and likely going to be spreading its tropical rains, really building across the middle part of the Gulf of Mexico. That's going to be funneling in. There's areas of Louisiana and a good portions of southern portions of Texas, and then all the extreme water vapor energy will get pulled north again back into Nebraska, as well as into the Dakotas, especially there into Iowa, as well as into Minnesota, with more flooding rains and severe storms. But there's where the snow flies over the next 48 hours. It's right up here where we have the winter storm warnings and winter weather advisories. Most of this snow is going to be over the 5,000 foot range, but nonetheless, it's not like that abnormal for them to get snow this time of year. But yeah, it definitely tells you the contrast of the ridging out east and the contrast of the deep trough out west, and with the temperatures in the middle. Yeah, that's the clash, and that's bringing the severe storms that's likely going to unfold again on Tuesday, with more record highs, now potentially 25 record high temperatures, as the high just likely expands and deepens for a good part of Ohio, portions of Pennsylvania. But especially as you get up the coast here, getting into New York and Long Island and Massachusetts and Connecticut, Rhode Island, you got widespread 90s, some upper 90s, even 90s approaching the state of Maine. I think they even get hotter as we get deeper into the week. But look where the cooler anomalies are. When you see temperatures, basically below 90 for this time of year, that tells you there's probably clouds in the area, or going to be rain or a good trough that's especially up there into Montana. But there's the severe storms as we head into Tuesday. So another bullseye back into Duluth, as well as into Minneapolis, back into the Sioux Falls region, further south into Omaha, back into Goodland. Those areas will be under the gun for more severe storms, some larger hail and damaging winds, and you can't rule out an isolated tornado or two within that atmosphere heading into Tuesday. And then going into Wednesday, I think that's when that tropical little disturbance, likely gets a little bit closer to landfall. Whether it gets named or not is irrelevant. It's just going to be spreading its tropical moisture in a good part of the southern portions of Louisiana, but especially there into Texas by then, where they're going to be looking at more flooding rains, especially along the coast, as the heavy rain just continues for those areas back into Wisconsin. So if you break it down between now and Wednesday morning, so this is over the next 48 hours, most of the heavier rainfall will be likely out on the open waters, but starting to spread, especially in the coastal areas. Some of these areas could pick up easily 4 to 8 inches of rainfall further south into Louisiana, down into the southeast coast, back into Galveston, maybe possibly the Houston Metroplex, getting into Victoria. That likely swings further southward into Corpus Christi, the Brownsville area, and then some of it will start feeding into central Texas, while areas to the north, taking advantage of that heavier water vapor content, will start spreading those flooding rains, really inundating a good part of Nebraska, there portions of Kansas, as Iowa, back into the Dakotas, especially there in Minnesota and Wisconsin. They're going to be in the favored areas, just seeing the flooding rains on heading into Wednesday. So there's where the cooler anomalies, right? You got widespread 60s and 70s, if not 50s, for a good part of the Northwest. You got the cooler anomalies coming into Texas with those 80s. That tells you there's a lot of clouds, a lot of rain around, complements of that disturbed weather. But outside of that, it's just everything about the ridge and the record heat that will continue to expand, with the 90s surging well into Michigan there, as a good part of Ohio and good part of the Northeast, and now 96, 97 degrees for Maine. That's approaching actually almost all-time record highs up there into the state of Maine. I mean, it's very unusual for them to get that hot, especially this early on of the season. That's hence the record high temperatures will likely unfold. 36 potentially record high temperatures on Wednesday. But outside of that, this is where the rain would likely be heading into Wednesday. Most of it likely stays out of Oklahoma. Most of it likely stays out of North Texas, and mainly impacts central Texas, especially south and southeast Texas, where the cool front will be. That's where the heavier rains will likely be on Wednesday afternoon, heading into Kansas, through Iowa, back into Wisconsin by then. And of course, where all the clearing is, that's where the ridge of high pressure and a lot of the sinking air will be, not just on Wednesday, but heading into Thursday with, again, more, more record high temperatures for a good part of the Northeast. I mean, some of these areas could approach the century mark of triple digit temperatures. Is definitely not out of the question in some of these isolated areas. But yeah, nonetheless, a lot of heat going to be over that area for a good part of the week. And by Friday, I think it finally starts to move out a little bit. It's still succumbed over the Northeast, but now it'll start shifting further south as more of this tropical weather will start pushing further west out of Texas. It allows that ridge to build back in, and a good part of this area highlighted in red is going to be under that sinking air in that summertime heat as we head into the first official full day of summer there in the 21st on Friday. The first official full day, I think summer starts officially on Thursday around 3:50 in the afternoon. But you can see where the ridge is will likely be on Friday is where the clearing is, and outside of that, that's where you have some of the instability. So you get into these ridge rider type setups just going up and over the ridge, and that's where likely, as we get bubble up in the atmosphere in the heat of the afternoon, where showers and thunderstorms will likely break out as we head into Friday afternoon away from the ridge. And notice some more tropical moisture comes back for Florida. Yes, that's going to be bringing more tropical rains down there for them, as the ridge will likely just keep expanding over a good part of the south and keep the instability further north with the more of a ridge rider start to take shape, putting the line of thunderstorms and all the heavier rains for the upper Midwest, especially as we head into the upcoming weekend, because we'll be looking at for more tropical type weather. Little disturbance continues to pull tropical moisture back there into Cuba, back into Florida there, with more instability coming back into play into Iowa and back into Minnesota, as well as into Wisconsin. And there's the tropical rains that's still inundating a good part of Florida for heading into Sunday for this upcoming weekend, as the more of the ridging will start to dominate a good part of the country. So if you look at the breakdown over the next 7 days, you can see much cooler anomalies come in for the Northwest, and under drying conditions, just really where the kind of the winter storm warnings and watches are out there, or the winter weather advisories for portions of Idaho and Montana. And then of course all the heavier rains with the bullseye taking shape across Kansas, Nebraska, the Dakotas, back into Iowa, as well as into Minnesota, getting into Wisconsin and portions of Michigan there. And then you'll have the dry slot. That dry slot is the ridge of high pressure that's going to be dominating for a good part of the week for much of this area. And then, of course, this is the tropical rains likely coming back for later in the week for Florida, but especially as we head into Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday for a good part of Texas, mainly along the south, with that tropical weather pulling all those tropical rains and the flooding rains. Of course, further south you live along the coast there, they could easily pick up 4 to 8 inches, if not even more, in some of those isolated areas. So guys, I appreciate you guys watching. Make sure you hit the like button, make sure you subscribe to my channel, and catch my next update, why I protect you before and after the storm.